China has just changed a major LNG supply deal worth $2 to $4 billion a year, replacing the US with Australia. All because of the ongoing trade war with the United States after Trump escalated the situation by imposing additional tariffs. This is a serious blow to energy exports. But it gets even worse. Now China is trying to rescue Canada's struggling oil industry. If Beijing gains control over the supplies, the US could lose Canada as well. And this is a threat not only to the economy, but also to Washington's political influence. Because if China establishes itself there, Canada might finally break free from the pressure of American politics. But the main threat is not in this. China is quietly and without noise building its energy empire, an empire that one day might challenge the global dominance of the US. And what will happen if countries like Canada and Australia start following China's rules instead of America's? Let's delve into this, as this shift in global roles could change the world forever. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future analyses. So, in March 2025, the global energy industry was shaken when China suddenly stopped purchasing liquefied natural gas, LNG, from the United States. This decision was made following a new wave of trade tensions between the two countries. Earlier, the US imposed new tariffs on Chinese goods, and in response, Beijing imposed a 15% tariff on American LNG. This was followed by the longest cessation of LNG imports from America. Starting from June 2023, it lasted more than 40 days. And this was not just another trade dispute. It shook the entire global energy balance. In 2024, the US became the world's largest exporter of LNG, sending nearly 340 million cubic meters of gas per day. It served key markets in Europe and Asia, including France, the Netherlands, Japan, South Korea, and India. China also played an important role in this business, regularly importing more than 400,000 tons of LNG from the Americans each month. For many years, it seemed that a strong energy partnership was forming between the two countries. America received its revenues, and China had stable supplies. But this sudden rupture showed how quickly alliances crumble when politics interferes with energy. China did not sit idly by. Instead, it quickly began to seek other energy sources. One of the most significant steps was the signing of a 15-year LNG supply agreement with the Australian company Woodside Energy in March 2025. This became the first long-term agreement between a Chinese company and an Australian LNG producer in recent years. This move signaled that Beijing no longer wants to depend on a single supplier, especially the USA, where business can easily be sacrificed for political decisions. China is clearly preparing not for a temporary trade skirmish, but for a prolonged energy competition. Earlier, some media reported that China was allegedly redirecting its LNG purchases to Europe, but this turned out to be inaccurate. Europe and China have different energy strategies, and there is no evidence that Chinese gas is massively going to European ports. Nevertheless, Europe has still come out ahead. Since 2022, when the war in Ukraine forced Europe to sever ties with Russian gas, the continent has been investing significantly in new energy sources. Countries like Finland have launched new LNG terminals such as the Vimco terminal, which began operations in January of 2023. Europe has actively started purchasing American LNG, and the surplus supply that emerged after China left the American market may have helped European buyers lower prices. However, for the United States itself, this has become a serious problem. Companies that relied on China as a stable client were left with a surplus of gas and a lack of demand. Prices for American LNG went down, and the stocks of major exporters like Cheniere Energy and Tellurian plummeted sharply. According to the US Department of Energy, in the first 9 months of the 24th year, the country exported 91 billion cubic meters of LNG, half of which went to Europe. Now, with China out of the game, American producers are hastily seeking new markets to avoid a surplus and further price declines. But the most alarming part of this whole story is the blow to US influence. All these years, Washington has used energy exports not only for business, but also as a tool of foreign policy. When America supplied gas to its allies, it gave it leverage at the diplomatic table and helped build international alliances. But the break with China has shown how quickly this influence can evaporate if countries start seeking alternatives. This is a warning signal. In the modern world, energy is no longer shielded from politics. It has become a part of it. China's rejection of American LNG is not just a short-term spat. It could mark the beginning of a larger shift where energy is used as a weapon in global politics. In the 20th century, power was defined by oil. In the 21st century, perhaps everything will be decided by liquefied gas. And now, at stake are not only billions of dollars, but also trust between powers, control over supplies, and influence on the global stage. We are witnessing a new energy geopolitics. And if these are just the first steps, what will the next ones look like? Recent changes in the global energy markets are causing serious concerns, especially regarding the position of the US as a leading LNG exporter. And the situation in Europe only heightens these worries. Even during his first presidential term, Trump actively pushed for Europe to abandon Russian gas and switch to American. Germany is making a deal with Russia for oil and gas. And yet, you are supposed to defend against Russia. And here Germany is paying Russia billions and billions of dollars a year. Even though it is more expensive, it is considered politically reliable. After the start of the war in Ukraine, this strategy even worked. European countries began to massively purchase American gas. But now everything is starting to fall apart, and Europe is quietly returning to its previous suppliers. At the beginning of 25, Europe was still a major buyer of American LNG. It accounted for about 48% of all LNG imports to EU countries in the first half of last year. That's approximately 10.5 billion euros. But this is already 15% less than the year before. That is, Europe is gradually reducing purchases, and everything indicates that this trend will continue. One of the main reasons is the increasing trade tension. The Trump administration took a tough stance on trade issues, which prompted retaliatory measures from a number of countries in the form of counter tariffs. In particular, China imposed retaliatory tariffs of 15% on LNG from the USA. This makes American LNG less competitive and more expensive compared to gas from Qatar, Russia, or Australia. Europe has not yet imposed direct tariffs, but the tension is already forcing the government to reconsider its strategy. And what is particularly telling is that despite all these efforts to move away from Russian gas, countries like France, Spain, and Belgium increased their imports by 11% in the first half of last year. If it happened once, it is possible that it could happen again. This shows that when it comes to energy resources, price and availability often trump politics. At the same time, Europe is investing in the development of renewable sources and signing contracts with Algeria, Norway, and Azerbaijan to meet its future gas needs. All of this creates significant challenges for American energy. If gas export terminals are underutilized, it leads to losses. Their maintenance is very costly, and without stable foreign buyers, they cannot survive. If Europe continues to move away from American LNG and China does not return, the US will have to reduce production volumes, lay off workers, and even close certain facilities. These events cast doubt on the future of America's energy leadership. The US was recently considered a reliable supplier for key countries, but now risks losing this position. And this is no longer just an economic issue. It's a blow to political influence, where energy has always played an important role. To stop this decline, the US will have to rethink its entire strategy. It is urgent to restore trade relations, offer more favorable terms, and invest in technologies that can reduce the cost of LNG, and perhaps become more flexible and open in matters of global climate and energy. Without serious changes, America risks losing its energy leadership for good. But the US has problems not only with China and Europe. Canada is also starting to drift away. For many years, the US and Canada were reliable partners in energy. Canada, with its rich oil and gas reserves, directed most of its resources southward to America. And Washington, in turn, built its energy security on these supplies. But now everything is changing at an alarming speed, and the issue is largely due to a mistake by the US itself. When Washington proposed a 10% tax on Canadian oil and gas, it became a catalyst. Canada began to look for other markets. Americans were confident that Canada wouldn't go anywhere, as it has few major ports, and all the infrastructure is built on pipelines going to the US. But today's world is completely different. Countries want to have a choice of whom to sell to and from whom to buy energy. And at the moment when the US began to complicate trade, China seized its opportunity. In Calgary, the heart of Canada's oil industry, the largest Chinese petrochemical company, Rongsheng Petrochemical, arrived and began establishing connections. Soon, Canadian oil began flowing eastward, to Asia. The numbers speak for themselves. Not long ago, 97% of all Canadian oil went to the US. This meant that revenues, jobs, and the entire economy in this sector depended on the demand and decisions of Washington. If the US raised taxes or changed the rules, Canada would suffer losses. But now everything is different. In 2004, major companies like Suncor, Shell, and BP Imbalaw began signing contracts with China on a free on-board basis. This means the oil is sold in Canada, and the Chinese side takes full responsibility for the delivery. This gives Canada more control, without involving the US in the supply chain. But the biggest game changer was the Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline, TMXM, whose construction was completed in 2004. This project cost approximately $34 billion and allowed for increased oil transportation volumes from Alberta to the Pacific coast. Before the expansion, the pipeline could transport 300,000 barrels per day. Now it can transport 890,000 barrels per day. That's almost 3 times more. But most importantly, it connects Alberta's oil fields directly to Canada's Pacific coast. This means that oil can now be loaded onto tankers and sent directly to China, India, and other Asian countries, bypassing the USA. This pipeline changed everything. Now oil tankers can leave Canada's west coast and head straight to Asian markets. It becomes an independent player in the global energy market. For China, this is also a gift. It now has a reliable partner right next door. But with new strength come new risks. China's deep involvement in Canada's oil industry raises many questions. Right now, it seems that Canada has the situation under control. But could China in the future start dictating prices or influencing Canada's policies? Will Canada find itself dependent again? Only this time not on the USA, but on Beijing? These concerns are becoming increasingly vocal. Moreover, the issue of ecology has become acute. Many representatives of indigenous peoples, scientists, and environmentalists have spoken out against the TMX pipeline. People fear oil spills, deforestation, and increased emissions. The economic project may be profitable, especially in light of Asian contracts, but it could undermine Canada's natural heritage and derail its climate commitments. The more Canada becomes an energy power, the more pressure it faces, including in terms of its responsibility to the entire world. Such developments should concern the USA. They were confident that Canada had no alternatives, but now Canada has proven that it can choose other partners and build its own routes. America is losing not only part of its energy security, but also its influence in North America. Meanwhile, China is only gaining. It is not just acquiring oil, it is gaining a foothold in the West. Canada, which the USA once considered its backyard, is now opening its doors to Beijing. And now, the main question is, if America continues to lose its energy allies one by one, who will stand by its side when the next crisis comes? Share your opinion in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all events. Thank you for watching and see you in the next episode.